course not going to be with it. Should be late. Thank you. It's 5 p.m. and I'll call the regular council meeting to order for Monday, May 25th. Welcome, everyone. Our presenters ready to go here. Before we start, though, we should go through the agenda. Chief Gowdy.
Administration has one item to add to the mailbox, and it's an invitation to participate at the Lacombe Dementia Friendly Community Project. Unfortunately, we didn't get this in time to include in the agenda package, but the first meeting of the group is June 9th, and so we wanted to let council know of the opportunity. We are going to try and find out some more information on the exact time, and we'll be in contact with councillors again to see if there's any interest or to see if you prefer to send an administrative representative.
That sounds good. There has been some interest shown by council already, so once you find out information, we'll make a determination from there. Welcome, Councillor Hoekstra. We were just going through the agenda. Was there anything that you wanted to add?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Gibbs?
I would move then that we adopt the agenda with the slight amendment, the addition of 6.2C, I'm assuming that would be. So yeah, with that addition of that.
Very good.
To the mailbox.
Anything else? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. So slated for this evening, we have our annual report for the 2019 year from the Lacombe Police Commission. And here we have two very able representatives, our chief, Lauren Blumhagen, and Corey Gish, also the chair of the commission with us. Thank you both for attending. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So I will go through the report for you, and I think everybody has received a copy of the report for information previous to tonight. And then once I go through the report, both myself and Chair Gish are available for questions in relation to the report or any other questions you might have of us. So as I go through the report, if you have any questions along the way or need some interpretation of any of the statistics, feel free to interject and ask. So in 2019, the Commission and the service developed a 3-year strategic plan, which included priorities for us between 2019 and 2021 in the areas of exemplifying excellence in policing, recruitment and retention of staff, reducing crime and victimization, strengthening community partnerships, improving traffic safety, and excellence in police service delivery. So within 2019, in meeting some of our strategic objectives, 2019 was the first year that we had full operational years with the community liaison position and our crime reduction team working for a full year. We've seen benefits overall with the implementation of those two positions and in a variety of areas of meeting our strategic goals. We have definitely seen some inroads. In relation to strengthening community partnerships, we also implemented a monitoring service for community peace officers, including our local community peace officers, as well as Lacombe County and Red Deer County. With those services, it increases our partnership with other enforcement agencies. Communication provides a safety necessity for those agencies to meet their OH&S mandates, but it also does provide us with a small revenue stream as well, or offset some of our operational costs as far as our dispatch center goes. In that realm, we've also increased our ability to communicate with the RCMP with the changing provincial radio systems And some of those systems, the initial phases occurred in 2019 and are being completed in 2020. We continue to provide 24/7 service to our citizens, and with our manpower staffing in 2019, we were at full strength. However, we were still short operational bodies because we had 2 members, Constable Walker and Constable Marcelli, still in training in Edmonton, so not acting in an operational capacity, and they weren't available to assist with our minimum staffing needs. But when we hire people, it does take them a while to become fully operational. But on paper, we were at full strength, which was positive for the service. One of the things that council is well aware of is in the area of traffic safety and that strategic priority. We did move forward with our automated traffic enforcement initiative, and due to provincial government decisions, those activities were suspended. So we're still working on plans to operationalize other traffic safety initiatives and work them into our daily operations to meet our strategic priority in regards to traffic safety and collision reduction. We do have our members focusing on the areas of traffic enforcement, and we do identify areas of concern and focus our attention in those areas, but we don't at this point have a plan like we had developed for the automated traffic initiative. 2019, we conducted a community survey with citizens of Lacombe, and we were very pleased with the results of that survey, and the information garnered from our citizens definitely helps us in focusing on where our resources need to be. The overall satisfaction rating of 82% overall was is a very good rating. This is also a component in our provincial standards audit. So we did go through a provincial standards audit in the fall of 2019, and we were in full compliance with that standards audit and received our report that I believe was also shared with council. 2019, our calls for service overall, we saw a 1.25% decrease from 2018. However, we're still 7% above the 5-year average. Some of those figures may attribute just to our 2 bodies being in a training environment where they would have been carrying any caseloads that may affect the overall caseloads for our members. That's reflected in that call for service statistic. We had an increase of 5% in crimes against persons. There again, many of those calls are in relation to domestic violence, which is still a priority and a focus for us. But also, as we move into social media environments, our harassment calls via social media platforms also is increasing as well. And that is an area that we are trying to address, and we have implemented our LPS website, actually with the assistance of the IT folks here at City Hall. And we have built in a social media platform. We're still working on how that information is rolled out, but we are definitely increasing our messages to the public in all areas of crime prevention through our website and also through media releases. So those were areas that we wanted to increase and make a priority. And late in 2019 and into this year, we're definitely seeing that the information is getting out to the public, more often, more frequently, and more consistently. So we look forward to maybe some reductions in various areas with the use of our social media platforms. We had an 8% increase in crimes against property. Some of that was due to, I guess, random mischiefs. But also what we did notice is through our active and preventative patrols, our members were identifying property crimes and recovering property that was obtained by crime through their proactive measures, not waiting for those calls to come in. We made a number of seizures last year where individuals who either stopped in their vehicles or going into various locations and found in possession of stolen goods. So as we deal with those proactively, our numbers tend to go up because we're recording those occurrences, but it can also be interpreted as a success story, and that those proactive patrols are working to our advantage. In the area of drug offenses, 55% decrease in overall drug offenses. It's a little hard to interpret that one being the legalization of marijuana came in the fall of 2018, so a lot of the lower level drug charges disappeared because it wasn't an offense, and the majority of our drug charges was really simple possession of marijuana. Over the coming years, with the work of our crime reduction team and some of the work that our members are looking at, we are noticing that we're actually making larger seizures and have some increases in the number of possession for the purpose of trafficking and larger quantities of chemical drugs. Those numbers will never be as high as the old simple possession charges were, but we are seeing some increases in that area. And that there again, that's a reflection of proactive measures, not waiting for those calls to come in. And we had the overall increase of 12% in other criminal code offenses. Those offenses are a broad range, can be in relation to financial crimes, Excise Act, Customs Act, a variety of different areas. There again, some of those instances are we're noticing compromised through the internet and other social media platforms as well. So there again, we'll do further analysis into those causes and try and implement strategies to reduce those numbers. In the area of impaired driving, we're down 7%. However, we did have a very active check stop program last year, and we focused on major events and weekends where traffic was increased and people were out and socializing through the summer months or long weekends. We actually doubled our proactive check stops and also advertised the results of those check stops and results. So with public information and proactive measures, we noticed at those check stops that the number of violators coming through was dropping significantly. So the reduction is probably in relation to those initiatives. We also did receive some provincial funding to be able to increase those check stops, and we're hoping that some of that provincial funding continues. However, we haven't heard anything so far this year. Into some of the other areas, as I previously commented, we did create our crime reduction unit, which consists of 2 members, and then the community liaison unit is 1 member, and then we also have our school resource position. Within our provincial standards audit, those 3 positions were identified as being very beneficial to the organization in identifying community needs and having the ability to assess what is really going on in our community and planning a strategy to deal with any community issues on the areas of enforcement, but also information and education and crime prevention initiatives. All three of those areas tie together and complete the loop when you're trying to identify, prevent, and respond or react to some of the criminal activities. With our staffing, our authorized strength was 22 sworn police officers. We also had 8 full-time, 2 part-time civilian support staff, and 5 casual civilian support staff that filled roles in casual dispatch relief, or also we have casual guards. As I've reported in previous years, our police population ratios were a concern, but actually with our current numbers, we're 15% lower than the national average, but only 7% lower than the provincial average. So we're definitely more in line with the police to population ratios of the entire province. And I think that's the work of everybody involved in developing our human resource plans. And we are happy to be in that range.
Chief Bluming,
Yes.
before we move on away from these slides here on the operational highlights for breach of court, that number has spiked pretty dramatically up to 200 events since 2016. It was 2.5 years or 3.5 years, whatever the case may be, depending on the dates. I'm just curious, what is it that generates those statistics? Is that individuals that were supposed to show up to court and fail to do so that reside in Lacombe, or is this when members are actually called to pay a visit to these individuals? What exactly are those numbers?
So, sorry, I haven't made it to the graphs here yet, and the reference point is.
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
the pages aren't numbers.
So,
Page 8.
yeah, no, that's read. So so as I was saying before, is our ability to identify offenders and even with our proactive patrols on property crimes and significant events. When we get to breach of court orders, that can be probation orders or people have been released on charges with conditions. So released on a recognizance or by a just of peace, various orders. But our approach has been a more proactive approach to targeting prolific offenders or people that continue to commit crimes even after they've been given conditions by the courts. So we have actively gone out, we work with probation, we review our probation list, but also our recognizance and people that are on conditions. And we will do spot checks on people with curfew conditions or make random checks of those individuals if we see them in a motor vehicle or wherever to ensure that they're complying with those conditions. And because of those proactive responses, you can see that our numbers went up significantly. But that's part of that targeted offender approach. So if we have somebody that we've dealt with for a number of break and enters per se, and we know that they're still, they've been released and they're still in our community, we are following up with them. And we've been very successful in arresting or dealing with them on breach charges. If we get enough of those types of charges, our likelihood of getting somebody remanded in custody in an environment where they can't reoffend increases. So by proactively targeting those individuals, we may reduce problem online.
And certainly I have no problem with the rationale. That sounds very sound. I'm just curious what generates those numbers.
Yeah.
Is that an actual officer happening to run into this individual, or is it an individual that just plain doesn't show up for court that resides in Macomb, or what? How is that? I mean, we're talking 4 a week. I mean, it's substantial. That generates that 197 number in that graph. What is the trigger?
So not appearing for court is a different charge.
Okay.
So these ones are breaching court orders. So if we catch an individual who's committing a crime that's already on conditions, we are charging with that offense. But part of that targeted approach is we're catching people committing other crimes, issuing this charge, but we're also knocking on people's doors. If you're told you have to be in your house from 9 o'clock till 6 in the morning, and we show up at 10 o'clock, if you're not there, we will follow up with charges. So it is, like I say, that proactive approach and targeted enforcement. And that's something actually that I'm happy to say is working, even though the statistics look like they're going up. For us, it's sending a message that if you're going to be in our community and under those conditions, you need to be abiding because somebody is going to follow up.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So was that carried out by the creation of the CRT, or is that carried out by General Patrol members? Because obviously you've created this 2 CRT positions. So is that increase in that number reflect upon the creation of those 2 members?
No, it's a unified approach. The creation of those 2 members helps feed the information and helps identify who might be a more prolific offender or more active in the community. But that information is shared with our general patrol members, and they're doing the majority of the follow-up and the door knocks after hours. Our crime reduction team does do that work as well and ensures that if somebody is a repeat offender and they're caught again, that we're including those charges for the breaches, but it really is a collective approach, and I wouldn't want to, I think our crime reduction team helps lead that, but it's really a direction that service has gone to, and everybody sees the advantages of doing those follow-up checks.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know it's different roles of different areas that are created and reasons why, like the
and each area can feed each other.
right.
So even the creation of those of the crime reduction team, that should feed into what patrol is doing, and the information from our patrol units feeds into the intelligence and information gathering to be able to identify various individuals, and they can't work in isolation of each other if we're going to see some successes. So, it just brings it full circle and involves the entire service. I'll get into the rest of these statistics and so as we go through various lines are representative of the statistics I already gave you, but the breach of court orders, was happy to speak to that one. If there's any other areas within the statistics that you'd like me to speak to specifically, I will. And actually, one of the areas that I will speak to is the area of mental health calls for service, where we have gone down marginally, I'll say, but over the past few years. But locally and provincially, our approach to dealing with mental health complaints and calls for service and the policing role within that realm, it's an area that can be very time consuming for us. And we have expectations within the community, but also with other agencies such as Alberta Health Services as to what we're doing with individuals. We sit on a provincial committee for policing, developing strategies on this role, and we collaborate with Alberta Health Services, Alberta Health, Alberta Mental Health, a variety of different agencies. And in the policing realm, we were really spinning our wheels by going out and apprehending people under mental health, delivering them to a designated facility or hospital, only to have them turned away when the approach should be that should be our last resort. We should be making referrals and identify local services, outreach services to assist people with mental health issues or disabilities or addiction issues. So we've been working with a variety of agencies, had discussions with our local hospital, our EMS staff provincially, and we're starting to reduce those numbers and make more referrals to community service and engage others who are probably more helpful in this realm to the clients we serve as far as assisting them through whatever crisis they might be in. So that has worked very well for us, and there's a lot of work to do in this area. And we will continue to focus on that area and hopefully see further reductions. But after 4 p.m., please become the social agency that's available, and we get those calls, and we're definitely trying to reduce our numbers in those areas, get people the help they need so that we can focus on other areas of policing responsibilities.
While you're perusing the stats, I can just speak lightly from the Commission's point of view. We've introduced a new member since January to 2020. Commissioner Elaine Wilson-Larson, who's new to our community and has been a great asset. In 2019, we had our public complaints director retire, and we've managed to replace that position as well. We've been struggling a little bit with the Attorney General's office, getting the training in place for our new members. It's quite a learning curve when you join the Police Commission and try to understand the role of the commission vis-a-vis councillor, vis-a-vis the service itself. But as a group, we're finding some successes, and have some great support from the city as well through Ross, and we're grateful for that. So I wanted to express that. As a commission, we've already had the opportunity to meet with Chief Gowdy and the Senior Financial Officer, Mr. Reyes, just to start talking about our budgeting. We have a big budgeting year coming up with the commission. We've got just all of the challenges that the city faces completely with the lack of stability and where the money is coming from, but the ongoing increase in costs. We know that there is it's a negotiation year at the end of the year as well with the police service in the city. So as a commission, we're paying some attention to all these details and trying to just be prepared and working forward so that we're playing our role and doing our job and providing support to the chief in his role of running the service, but also trying to make sure that we are representing the community and making sure that our role as commissioners is being fulfilled. So I meant that as a distractor, just as everyone was maybe checking the stats, just in case there's some more questions.
Chair Gish, I was curious of those challenges you're facing for the educational aspect from the Soljan's office. Is that for not officer, chair position?
So when you become a member of the Police Commission, there's some initial training that needs to happen. And so our new member is having trouble getting access to it, and our public complaints director. And they're working on it. We've been in communication, we've had response. So it's not a dead end, but it's just part of the challenges. So the existing commission members have already had that Attorney General training. So it is just as we get changes in our ranks, right, they need to be educated.
And has the minister's office been made aware of the shortcomings of that particular department?
We feel that we have had proper communication. We're simply just getting we're busy, this is important, but you're on our list type of response. And the COVID hasn't helped with so many things. I don't think it's very high. It's a few people who are missing the training, and there's probably several other jobs to be done.
Okay.
I don't feel like we need to do anything more than what we've done with communication. I am satisfied that that the people who need to know that this is missing know.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Jacobson?
Yeah, two questions for the chief for now. First of all, for anybody who may be tuning in to listen here, has there been any emergence of any crime trends in relation to the COVID measures that have taken place over the last few months that have made any impact on operations of the police force?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've been assessing that all along, and obviously the city ECC was set up in response to the pandemic, and we've been in consultation with entities across the province, and some of the crime trends I'm not going to say necessarily crime trends that we've noticed here that have been consistent throughout the province are definitely in the areas of mental health, some in the area of domestic violence issues. And on the onset, because businesses were closed down, there was some activity that we noticed as far as individuals scoping out properties, and we believe that we prevented some break-and-enters from happening by through our proactive patrols, and we're successful in identifying individuals who make crimes before they happen. And that was an overall assessment that we noticed, and what we also noticed or has been reported on throughout the province in the area of drugs and drug trafficking. The price of illicit drugs went up. People with addiction issues still were trying to access those drugs, so we did notice a little bit of increased activity in those areas. In some ways, our ability to identify and detect was easier because everybody else was at home, while some of the individuals that were involved in criminal activities were out and about. So we recently had a number of search warrants executed over the last month and seized quantity of various drugs, including methamphetamine, cocaine, GHB, fentanyl, and firearms. Some ways we've seen increases there. Again, it's been a little bit easier for us to detect and identify areas of concern, and then provide enforcement action in those areas. So our overall, I guess, general complaints have been down just because people haven't been out and about. So some areas have the ability to really be more effective in the proactive measures, and as far as response, overall our calls for service have been down.
Yeah, two.
Yeah, I did. And then, in your professional opinion, the recent legislation that was passed federally restricting the sale and possession of certain types of firearms, is that going to enhance your ability to effectively deliver service in Lacombe, or will it have, what is your anticipation of the effect that will have?
I think it's a little bit too early to provide an answer to that question, simply because I've only recently received some of the information that the decisions to, I guess, restrict certain firearms has not been finalized at the federal level yet. So we really don't know what that looks like. It could definitely change. So at this point in time, from previous experience on some of the firearms issues is, I think, personally, it's it's a bigger problem. And I don't know that in the Western provinces, previous studies that I've seen based on actual data is many of our firearms issues or seizures, those firearms are not coming from necessarily recreational hunters or people that possess firearms. Many of those are coming through straw buyers or other criminal mechanisms or being smuggled across the border. And when we do seize firearms off the street, locally, I don't know that we've seen many that were listed on this new initiative through the government. So I think there's a deeper dive that needs to be completed into the overall strategies on how do we get illegal guns off the street. We're talking about firearms that are legally obtained in this instance, but how do we look at big picture and where are our problems? How are those firearms being accessed and what impact is it having on our communities? And definitely on the research I've seen, that's different in Western Canada than it is in Eastern Canada. So bringing all that together, I don't know that we have enough information at this time to know what impact it will have on us locally or within the province at this time.
Councillor Ross?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. One of your previous presentations with the automatic traffic enforcement at 3 light intersections, and that was shut down based upon a provincial review. Is there a timeline on that, or is that I don't know what?
So on when we might hear back from the province?
Yeah, sorry, because that was quite some time ago, and it was to be reviewed based upon whatever the.
So to date, we haven't been notified of any review. And there again, with the pandemic, many things that were out there haven't got a lot of attention or focus. However, we're still, I guess, operating on the presumption that those services or those programs, any new programs, are suspended for 2 years. So once we get new information from government or the 2 years have elapsed, then we'll look at that. One of the things though is our current strategic plan, if we're going to wait another 1.5 years to move forward with that initiative, I don't think that's responsible. We still have to address some of our issues and look at other strategies in the interim. And as we move along and look at the various strategies, that may impact our assessment or need of AT program as well. So I think once we get some clarity on which direction the government's going to move on that, then we will have to do a full assessment on how that fits into our strategic objectives.
Thank you. I just didn't realize it was a 2 year. I didn't know the timeline frame.
Well, that's what they initially stated, but they could change their mind or redirect at any time. I'm going to go somewhere else with that question, but I've forgotten. So.
Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. You'd mentioned that you're happy with the ratio of officers to population, but you also in your report you mentioned about increased resource numbers in 2020. Is that part of your mandate to do that? Like it's under operational highlights for traffic. You mentioned the Cone Police Service resource numbers will increase, and we look at education and enforcement will be the focus of 2020.
So as we progress and we're the commission and I are reviewing our human resource plan moving forward. We did have one developed, but that included our AT initiative and some benefits that we might get from that initiative in assisting with our resourcing. I'm happy with the progress. And we've got up to a provincial average that is in line with our goals and objectives as we implement probably more gradual increases. We still have a shortfall in that traffic area, and we're looking at various options for that. And you might see in future HR plans, and with the growth of the municipality and our census numbers, if we try and maintain the growth of the service with the rate of growth for our population, then that is an area that would probably be a priority for us to maybe implement a full-time traffic position or a new model to address those needs. And that's where I was saying earlier is we're still working on those plans and adapting, but that's definitely an area that if we had additional resources, that's where we'd probably focus them. And we do have some ideas, but we're still in the planning stages for a human resource plan and looking at all our resources, sworn and non-sworn, as to how we can fill some gaps, and maybe some traditional roles that were under the policing umbrella may move into other areas. So we're definitely in those discussions and trying to formulate those plans and also meet our goals and objectives as far as budget and any type of increases that may go with that. So
Can I have a little follow-up on that? Sure. So the 82% approval rate, how does that compare to other communities? It seems extremely good to me, and the force has been doing a great job, so.
it is good. I've seen some go up as high as 90% approval rate. Some of it does come down to question formulation, and but if you look at previous surveys for Lacombe, we have dipped down into the 70% range and up into the higher 80s. So in my view, anything over 75% is an excellent rating, because we also have our critics and those that don't appreciate the services provided. So in comparison to other municipalities with their own municipal police services, I would say we are in a within the same range. Within municipalities that are policed by other agencies, I would say we're significantly higher.
Thank you.
The only other item on the report that I just wanted to mention, because I think we've covered a variety of other areas, was with the crime severity index. We haven't received those figures for 2019 yet, so we weren't able to report on them. But in 2018, that was reported in 2019, we received a very favorable CSI indexing of 66 compared to 84 in previous years. One thing that may affect this rating, when we see the numbers for 2019, we did have a homicide in the city, which can have a significant impact on those numbers. So I just throw that out there, that that number may move not in our favor. But when we look at a significant event like that, the capacity we've built within our organization for our members to work on a very complex crime of that nature, we did access external resources as for guidance in some specialized areas. But the majority of that case was worked on by our members, and we demonstrated that from some very junior constables to some senior members of the service, we were able to investigate that file and bring it to a successful conclusion in a very short period of time. And it just shows that level of competencies where in the past we may have brought in an external agency to deal with that entire file, that we have built the capacity to serious nature right up to the highest threshold of crimes. So I think that speaks volumes for our membership. Other than that, I will my reporting and leave it open for any additional questions.
Thank you, Chief Blugan. We appreciate it. I know, I hope I didn't throw things off by allowing questions as we went through, but sometimes it's just easier on a particular subject. And although you did include it in this report, I wanted to mention publicly the service of a few of the members that are particularly noteworthy. Sergeant Zenz, you've got him here listed for the 20-year Alberta Long Service Award and the 20-year Police Exemplary Service Award, and Sergeant Kohut for the 20-year City Service Award, and Sergeant Martin for the 10-year Service Award. So there's plenty of others, but I thought those were particularly noteworthy. 10 years and above is pretty outstanding. So I think it's safe to say that we all appreciate the great work that the Oklahoma Police Service does for our community. So thank you.
And thank you for bringing that forward.
I think I saw a hand up over here somewhere. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mike Reese. I sometimes have a question in regards to the crime severity index, because sometimes a community has, with all due respect, a advantage of demographics and, advantage or disadvantage. And yet sometimes I almost think that the crime severity index should be more numbers based upon a longer average time span compared to that specific year to, say, 5 or 10 years. Because really, for example, homicides, we've had 2 in 35 years that I can remember. And it's like you're punished for that 1 year, yet we've had very few. Or I just sometimes have, and trying to comprehend the understanding of a crime severity index, like you should almost be compared to communities of comparable demographics rather than, it seems sometimes it can be, numbers can be to your advantage or not. It just, if I understand what I'm saying, it's kind of a.
It also doesn't reflect the fact that having a low crime severity index, is that because we have great policing, or does that mean demographically we're just in a different spot? And so that's, I think, it gives us something to look at, Councillor Ross, I think, but you're right, it's a number. So we can take a look, at least in 2019, where did we stand compared to Ponoka? Where did we stand, in the area? And it gives us an idea of how we're behaving inside of our community. But yeah, it's.
Those types of crimes do have an impact, but if you look at our crime severity over the last 5 years, we notice marginal differences and are concerned about that. When you look at the 5-year average, we've had 2 homicides in the last 5 years, and our crime severity index has changed, but is still very favorable overall. So when you look at over the last 5 years, we're still in good standing. In one incident, it is weighted clearance rates. So the effect is adversely, but not necessarily as significantly as we might see in a change of 4 or 5 points. When you look at the demographic around us, I would challenge anybody to find the CSI as favorable with us. Central Alberta is a very active area with rural crime and crime in municipalities. We have neighboring municipalities with less than desirable index numbers. A community like Lacombe is not immune to all of the problems that are around us. And I think that is a collaborative effort by all entities within our community. I think it's a sign of good policing, but there's also a social conscience that's developed within our community, our citizen base. We rely on our citizens to be as active in policing and maintaining our low crime rates as we put the expectations on the police. If we don't have that community involvement and relationship with our community, the police service can't do it on their own. So I think kudos to the citizens of Lacombe overall for looking after the community, and we're just one of those entities that keeps everything on the rails and works into that overall strategy.
Any other questions? Councillor Hibbs, go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, some of it's kudos, but I do want to commend you on the graphs this year. That's been a bit of a complaint for me in the past, and I find that these are a lot more readable and a lot more useful, that I can share them with people and really be able to explain what information they're looking for, because sometimes maybe the categories before were too broad or something like that. So, thank you for that. Some of the other points I think were already made, so I won't touch on those. But just to further on that CSI a little bit, I think that is something that you've only really just commented on, like just briefly in the whole report. And I do feel that comparison to other communities is actually pretty powerful, because I don't know if people really comprehend, okay, well, you hear a number, oh, it's low. You know what I mean? Like, but that doesn't really mean anything to them. But when you can kind of show the comparisons to kind of our neighbors, I think that's a lot more significant, and I think that does help bolster. I mean, I know we have it at 82%, approval rating, but I think it helps bolster that even further when you really can show the evidence. Like look what's happening in our community. Yes, socioeconomic might play into that a little bit, but that's just reality of things. So I would love to see going forward maybe a little bit broader, explanation of CSI and perhaps that comparison. And then just one final last thing, and I'm really glad that you brought that up about sort of community involvement in policing, because I'm very active on social media and I see over and over again, you've got people posting like, heads up, something's happening in the back alley and whatever. I'm like, have you called the police? And so it's a great debate on there that I see where people are like, no, you don't do that. You don't call the police. You just tell your neighbors or whatever. It's wrong to call the police on, or to call the police on somebody that might just be walking through the alley or whatever. So I guess what I would like is a little bit more clear direction from the commission or the police service on, asking for that community involvement, that yes, it's okay, that yes, that's what helps the police have eyes on the community, and which makes it safer for all of us. It's not a matter of harassing the teenager that's up to no trouble. Like if they're just walking and you approach them and what are you doing? And oh, I'm doing nothing, no harm, no foul, right? But how many times we've seen in the press releases where, you've taken the step to do a proactive, traffic stop, whatever, and it turns out that, they were up to no good in our community. So having the eyes of the community on the community helps, all of us. So I guess I would just request that, maybe it's just some greater communication on that, because I know for me, it certainly helps in my role to be able to say, no, look, this is a recent press release or whatever from the LTS. Yes, they really do want you to call it in when you find something is suspicious, right? So.
And we have conveyed that message a number of times, especially since the start of this year, on various crime prevention tips, but the being vigilant, watching what's going on in your community, looking out for your neighbor and reporting that to police. That message has gone out probably more in the last 3 months than it has in the last 3 years. But we intend to continue that. And as we develop with our use of social media, you may see Twitter feeds or Facebook notations that make those comments or ask for people to be watching them. So I agree that is an important message, and we're trying to get that out more consistently.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if you're planning on spending an hour with us or nearly an hour with us, but we appreciate both of your time. Thank you, Chair Gish and Chief Bloom-Megan. As I said previously, we appreciate the work that both organizations do in our community, and we'll see you again in the fall, I guess.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Giving us the time. Sorry for going over 15 minutes.
Ruben, when's this CAO report done? When's the review report done?
We can have a motion to consider, please. accept?
To accept as information. Sure,
Yes.
I'll make that.
Councillor Hibbs, thank you. And seeing no other input, all those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. So I didn't mention before we started with the presentation, we've got some individuals who are joining us electronically. Coordinator Pettibone, you're on the line.
I'm always here, yes, Mayor.
Good. The voice from above speaks, that's good, thank you. And yes,
It's just a city street. It's nothing. No, it's part of the city's,
okay, very good. Very good. So we have no public hearings this evening. The next item up is Manager Wilson will be bringing us the Human Resources, under the request for decision, it says Human Resources Council Policy Update. This is actually to be considered by council, but it's our Human Resources Employee Benefits Policy Update. Is that correct? Very good. Floor is yours, Manager Wilson.
Thank you. So presented for council's consideration is the revised employee benefits and recognition policy. The purpose of this policy is to define employee status, outline the benefit offerings, eligibility criteria, participation requirements, and the cost share arrangements. And it also outlines any current wellness and recognition initiatives for city employees. There is no material changes to this policy that significantly impacts any of the costs. There was more clarification and formalizing some of our existing practices and renaming the Lacombe Fire Department volunteers paid on call. We're formalizing the requirement of our footwear reimbursement that we have for our lifeguarding staff, which we've been doing through the annual budget process, but it wasn't in policy. So that's now embedded in here. And we've had to amend the long service program for those folks that have been with us 35 plus years as a departing gift. And those are really the material changes in this policy for your consideration tonight.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns from council? Councillor Clark?
I also move that council approve the employee benefits and recognition policy effective May 26, 2020.
Thank you. Very few items on that. Is there anything to add? Very good. With respect to that motion, then all those in favor? None opposed, thank you. The next item that we have.
Excuse me, just one more motion, please, to rescind the old policy, Mayor. Thank you.
We're not after confusion to have two in existence. Very good. Councillor Connick.
I also move that council rescind the existing employee benefits and recognition policy 14/24.01 2018 effective May 26.
Thank you. See no hands, all those in favor? Very good, thank you. Unanimous as well. And the next item up, 5.2, is Bylaw 479, the 2020 tax rate bylaw that will be presented by Manager Reyes, who will be joining us shortly. And to start that item off, I'll call on our Chief Administrative Officer, Gowdy, to lead us on.
Thank you. To begin this item, I need to advise you of an error in our administrative communications that resulted in the accidental omission of some budgetary information at your last, actually at your first review of our spring amendments. In early March, administration worked with the Lacombe District Recreation Parks and Culture to temporarily loosen the application restrictions on the Facility Rental Assistant Grant Program. This is a credit program that offsets the cost of renting some of the city's facilities to community groups and things deemed community centers. Some of the restrictions are things like the windows of application and the group eligibility criteria. The thinking being that this would help some of our community groups continue to function and provide services in the community throughout the pandemic and during the recovery. Unfortunately, although the material was written and intended to be included in the spring adjustments RFD, it was not included because of an email misinterpretation amongst senior staff, including myself. The impact is a potential loss of revenue for the city up to a maximum of $10,000. In all likelihood, the impact will be well below this amount because the intent of the program is to actually facilitate rentals that wouldn't otherwise take place if the grant wasn't able to offset some of the costs. However, there is the upside of the $10,000. Nonetheless, without the specific disclosure of this non-cash expense, the impact would be reflected, has been reflected in the overall COVID-19 revenue decreases that you previously saw, not broken out separately as a facility rental assistance grant increase to that credit system. The Lacombe District Recreation Parks and Culture Board has been advised of this increase. That's actually how it came to my attention. Representative Councillor Jacobson brought this to my attention last week. In conjunction with the loosening of the grant application restrictions, no other communication or advertising has taken place and the grant credits have not been allocated. If council would like to remove these additional facility rental credits from the budget, which you certainly are able to do, we would recommend a $5,000 reduction to the withdrawal that we have proposed in the 2020 from the 2020 operating reserve. Please accept my apologies for this unintentional error. Director Juke has some comments on steps we've identified to close this pitfall, as well as address a couple of strategic items that we included in your strategic plan.
Thank you, CAO Gowdy. So in past years, in the operating budget, the facility rental assistance grant expense was actually an expense item that was then transferred to other departments to pay for the facility. This was not working well in our accounting system, so we stopped that practice, but didn't really necessarily address it particularly well. There was an RFD in the 2020 operating budget process that completely explained the facility rental assistance grant program, the grandfathered free facility use roster, we called it at that time. And so that council was well advised at that time as to the amounts of the credit as CAO Gowdy is describing it. However, this additional amount was not identified to council. So the go forward plan is to capture the grandfathered free facility use, the facility rental assistance grant amount, and the facility rates that are set per year as well, by the way, by the rec board, in an annual policy to council that we'll propose during the budget process. And so there can be other items in the council's strategic plan that can be captured with the same policy. So we're going to look at, for example, tournament incentives and support and partnership with community groups, find ways to do that and potentially include that in that policy. So it'll be quite stand out and something that council can consider and improve per year, depending on economics and so on.
Thank you for bringing that forward. I know that never an easy thing to admit mistakes, but I want to thank Councillor Jacobson when he called me to bring this up. Neither of us could recall this going through council and it came before a rec board. So just to be clear, are these funds in addition to the already existing facility grant monies?
Yes, so there's approximately $4,400 in unexpended or unallocated grant funds available for the facility rental assistance grant. This would have made an additional $10,000 available through that credit program. It is a non-cash expense, but again, in theory, there's that revenue loss associated with that, or reduction in revenue for the facility, which would have brought it to $14,400 or so.
And does that also include the time that we've allocated to the Chamber of Commerce as well? Or is that in addition to?
This is in, sorry, Mayor Creasy, this is in addition to that amount. So the grandfathered free facility use is a different program the city has maintained since the LNC was rebuilt. And this is in addition to that. So this is essentially the ordinary guidelines set out this program for new initiatives, new community and public events. It's the way to get things off the ground. Mm-hmm. So those that are regular and routine and recurring are already captured in the free facilities.
So what was the rationale for tripling it?
We were getting requests from.
It's not tripling it, just to, so there's 4,000, there was 4,000 remaining. But the total facility rental assistance grant program is how much?
$6,000, which was reduced in 2020 operating budget from about, I believe, 12 or 13,000 in the prior year, because we moved some recurring events that were getting that assistance grant to the free facility use roster.
Okay. And that's marginally better than 4,200 to 14,000 better as it is from 6,000 to 1,600,000. But what's the rationale for that much of an increase?
So the rationale was that would be the cost associated actually with changing the eligibility. And so I had indicated early on in the pandemic process that was fine. I accepted that, and that kind of got over time translated into a $10,000 increase to the facility rental assistance grant program in its totality.
Okay. Councilor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I think in discussions there was several groups and organizations that were in need of using the facility that really used it for fundraisers that really the success of the fundraiser just went back into the community. So it was just an added benefit to reduce the cost of operating that fundraiser. So I could probably recall from that because obviously we're on Rotary, we applied for that grant several different times because really we're raising a fundraiser to contribute back to the community. And I think recognizing that there were several groups and organizations in order to enhance the success of their fundraiser. So if that makes sense.
Chief Cody?
So that is definitely the line of thinking that led us to that thought. The error here, though, is that we had intended to include a paragraph, which, as I said, is written, I have it right here, that was explaining this to council in the spring adjustments. I misinterpreted the email when that was sent over and said, oh no, that's a non-cash item. There's no expense associated with that. And so it did not get included. And so that is my error, which I apologize.
Fair enough. Councilor Koch?
And I appreciate that. I'm trying to figure out, am I missing an agenda item? Or are you just trying to lump this in the property tax bylaw? Like, to me, this is, or was it so late in the day you couldn't get a separate agenda item for that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's so late. Properly, it should have come at the spring adjustments.
No, I get that.
Time. But with that not being there, this is the closest item.
Okay.
Point taken, Councilor Connacht, but never too late for an apology or
Oh, no,
I hear you. Councilor Jacobson.
Sure. So, and thank you for clarifying that. So my concern with that being addressed, I just wanted two follow-ups. One, I assume there were no other items that were supposed to be brought to our attention for disbursement that didn't make it onto the agenda, that perhaps any other community groups or council representatives, those may be broadsided with.
Okay. Certainly not that I'm aware of, and we did.
And then as a follow-up, yeah, I mean, I would be in favor, I mean, I know we're not voting on this, but I'd be in favor of this regardless. Number one, the rec board has already made policy on this, assuming it's happening, so that would be odd to retract. And number two, if you see the LMCU statistics for the last few months, nothing's happening there anyway. So as I understand it, this is recorded as a loss, as a lowering of revenue, not an expense, right?
Correct, and I do need to, I guess, caution you there, because we talked about this quite a bit too. We do not have a handle on our facility budgets to the extent that I can say, oh, I know those budgets are accurate within $10,000 anyway at this time. So yes, it is reflected in those budgets amongst a lot of other modifications that we've had to make because of the current circumstances.
Yeah, so then I was just going to follow up with this. I mean, I think it's extraordinarily unlikely that the psychology of what has happened that has trickled down in the community is such that we're not going to see a ripple and return to full LMC use in the next 6 months anyway. So, anything that can slightly encourage people to get back out for something like this is probably not stupid.
Councilor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. The way I understand it, it's not just LMC, is correct? We're talking arena, talking all other facilities also?
So that's correct. The facility rental assistance grant with the modified eligibility criteria, I believe, is actually for the LMC or the arena. It could be for ball diamonds even. It's for the city's facilities in general.
And the idea of this increase, the way I kind of get a feel is that it's to have encourage tournaments, those types of things coming to our community, which will be economically will be a boost. Is that not correct?
Yes, that is correct. And certainly one of the restrictions that was on the facility rental assistance grant before was that it was for new events to help sort of get them started. We saw that with times as they are, we agree there's probably not going to be a swift return, and some community groups may struggle to host events that they've held many years in a row, and we wanted to make it eligible for that as well. We foresaw that there would be some increased costs, and that's where the miscommunication happened and the increase, unfortunately.
So just to be clear then, unbeknownst to us, we approved the $10,000 last meeting because it was not outlined as such.
So you have passed a first reading of a bylaw that contemplates that reduced revenue. So yes, but no, you haven't given it second or third reading, and so you have the opportunity to make a change.
Make adjustments there, and that was what we suggested, half of that. It just seems odd to me that we would have a policy in place for $6,000 and some odd dollars or whatever, and to increase it that significantly, that just seems interesting to me.
Not that it's a material, but there is no policy in place that is one of the challenges.
Practice that.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So for the second reading, what would be that council gives second reading to bylaw 479 as amended? Is that how you want this, or?
Not unless you're choosing to amend it.
Well, no, but he's changed it, so I'm asking for information, is that because you're changing it?
It's
not changing.
Not changing it, or?
It's up to us to change it.
Yes. I would recommend.
I'm asking with this $10,000 is what you brought up. And are we just moving on with the second reading as recommended, or does it have to be amended with what you brought up, is what I'm asking for process.
Chief Gotti?
So if you would like to include the $10,000 increase, then it's just a second reading as presented here.
Okay, thank you.
That's what's already been there. If you would like to remove that $10,000, and Councillor Jacobson's right, unfortunately, part of the error has created this situation where actually the rec board is aware of the $10,000, so there's a potential loss of face to draw it. But should you choose to do that, I would recommend a $5,000 decrease to the amount you're withdrawing from the reserve, from the operating reserve. So right now you're withdrawing about $21,000 to balance the budget in 2020. And so you could instead withdraw about $15,000.
And increase facility rental grant by 5 instead of 10.
I'm estimating there will only be a $5,000 actual revenue impact from the $10,000 increase.
Well, we've pretty well got that cleared up. Senior Manager Reyes, would you care to enlighten us for the proposed second reading for Bylaw 479, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Creasy. On May 11th, Council gave first reading to Bylaw 479. By adopting this bylaw, Council is authorizing the city to levy property taxes in 2020, including education taxes that are levied on behalf of the province. Tonight, administration is recommending Council give second and third reading to this bylaw. A few items that I would like to highlight is the fact that 2020 taxes are levied using 2019 property assessment values. And I have mentioned in my report previously, residential property assessments declined by 1.1% when compared to the prior year. Non-residential assessment values, on the other hand, increased by 0.4%. The overall assessment values declined by 0.5%. So essentially fairly flat. In 2020, the non-residential rate remains unchanged at 112%. The rates of residential and the residential rates. The target for this rate is 120%. The total municipal tax that will be collected by passing this bylaw will be 14,968,000, which is an increase of approximately 227,000 than in 2019. Now, this increase is mostly being offset by a decrease on the education property tax, which is going to be slightly below $5 million in 2020. And the main reason is we are using part of the over levy that we had to do in 2019 when we estimated what the education portion would be. And as well, the assessments that the province gave us ended up being lower than in 2019. And that's helping with a lower education tax in 2020. In total, we are expecting to collect slightly above $20 million in property taxes in 2020. And as I mentioned, the recommendation is to give second reading to bylaw 479 and also third reading. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Manager Reyes. Councillor Oakstraw.
Thanks, Marcresi. So I looked at the agenda from last meeting. So just for anybody who might be listening, and maybe some of us that are, I'm kind of with Councillor Connick on this. So when we approved the spring adjustments as presented, that information feeds into this bylaw. Is that correct? Is that why we're doing this together? Okay, but with the discussion we just had, it doesn't actually affect what we're collecting. We're not changing any of that, like it.
You wouldn't be changing it. No.
Okay. Okay, now that may I follow? May I follow up?
Certainly.
So the education property taxes we kind of over collected last year, and then this year we don't have to collect as much. So as as a regular citizen, what if next year we had to increase taxes and collect the true education tax? Are they going to be really hit hard then? Do you know where I'm in my brain? Because now we're sort of collecting less than we need to. I don't know. I guess I don't know what the solution is, but how do we inform the citizen that we collected more last year, less this year, so next year could be more again? That to me could be uncomfortable for some citizens.
Chief Gowdy.
So I agree, and it's something we wrestle with every year. Unfortunately, until you hear from the province, they may collect less next year because they have collected less, because they need less. And so there has been years they've collected less. Or they may collect 5% more, even though they don't need more. I mean, that was the original proposal this year was, I think, a 4.2% increase, even though they weren't actually spending any more money. So it is very tough to predict, and that's why we try to balance it year to year. There is a possibility, though, that next year it goes up double the amount.
Yes, and if I may add, last year was an unusual year, I would say, and it's mainly because by the time we passed the bylaw, we didn't really know what the province requisition was going to be, so we had to make an estimate, and that's what led to a little bit of overlay, and we are required to include that when we do the bylaw for the new year.
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you. I would go ahead and move that council give second reading to bylaw 479, just to get it on the table. But I do want to comment on the education levy. So in this current government's projected budget going out, they've been very clear that they are increasing their planned take from property owners to actually historic highs. So I can pretty much guarantee you to tell the residents that, yes, they're going to be coming. Now, that being said, we don't control that and we can't own that. So that is, the fact of the matter. But you can't then start slashing and burning on municipal services because unfortunately the province is taking a greater and greater share of, what we collect under, we're collecting it, but on their behalf. I do actually think that that's a significant thing that municipalities should be, lobbying on is getting out of that business period because, I mean, it's a bygone era. I understand why that exists. Believe me, I really understand, where that comes from. But the fact of the matter is that the government has taken away taxation powers effectively taken away taxation powers from school boards. And so this is just a remnant left over from that. And honestly, we don't need to be doing this. It's really unfair because we're meant to collect it. And even if in the cases we can't even collect it, we still have to remit it. And that's coming out of our, municipal reserve. So it's really quite ridiculous. I won't get carried away on that because I could talk about that for a long time. But I think that is important that everybody does know that. I'm not sure if everybody does know that, but in the next, over the mandate of this current government, they have already been very clear that education levy is going to increase. So I will just reiterate that I have moved second reading with no amendments and it's on the table.
Thank you. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So our tax rate is
the average increase is 1%.
Okay, it doesn't spell it out here. I know that, but I just want to be clear. I mean, it talks about mill rate and everything else, but
So that's the issue is that when you pass a tax rate bylaw, it's not in that same intuitive language of 1% average increase. It sets the mill rate down to the 1,000th point, I think, every 1 year. And so I agree, actually. Senior Manager Reyes and I had a long discussion about both things, that why doesn't it say 1%? And I talked to him about the idea of rebranding this as the composite tax, because it really, 30% of it soon will be actually a provincial tax, not a municipal tax.
okay, and I just wanted to state it for the record, because if the average citizen is reading this, they're not, what's my tax rate going to be? Okay. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Building on Councillor Hibbs' points, though, I noticed that not too long ago, there was a press release that Devon had sent out from Lacombe County, and Lacombe County had spelled out their rates, but they had a nice little chart. And they said Lacombe County was 0%, and then they had Alberta Education is this percent, Lacombe Foundation, this is your total. I think it would be really helpful if we did the same when we send out the tax notices and say, look, from the city it's 1%, education, and your total is, so just the citizens are very clear. I really like this chart. I hope we do something similar when we send out the tax notices, so people are very clear what we have raised.
Thank you, Chief Gowdy.
If you have a copy of what the county has sent them, that'd be great. We should make sure to have that.
Should can certainly forward that to you in email.
Devin sent it out, but I can send it.
So, because you brought it up earlier, and there was some communication between council over the exact increase. I know that it was brought forward at one point in time. We were trying to keep it below 1, then it was talking 0.9, and then we faltered from that. Is it safe to say that the recording was went over and we are 100% certain that it was left at 1% and not 0.9?
Yes. 100% certain.
Very good. Chief Kelly?
Sorry, I just want to go back to this comment with the chart. We have actually already been printing some of the tax notices. So I will have to talk with Manager Reyes about how to incorporate the chart. Maybe it's already there, or whether that's something we might have to do in the future. I just want to double check where we're at.
As a ratepayer, I just think that would really help. Then it's crystal clear to our citizens how much we raised for this fund, and how much the provincial portion is. This is your total.
I think
And
it's
so,
safe to say that that's been an ongoing battle to bring forward that as clear and precise as we possibly can, and that's a great suggestion. And we'll make necessary adjustments if in fact we're able to, and they haven't already been out, but if not, those will be considered or undertaken for next year. Is that fair? And accurate, Chief Cody?
Yes.
Very good. Councillor Hoekstra?
You started to have me questioning. I went and pulled up the minutes from December 9th. It says 0.9.
That's kind of what I thought too. That's why I asked the question, but I was told that the tapes that went over for the YouTube feed, in fact, those were recorded correctly. The unfortunate part is those minutes were accepted by council as correct. So something's got to change.
There was a motion for 1%. I don't have it right in front of me, and that's the last motion that I remember seeing.
Given that we did not approve that in the minutes recorded as 1%, as 0.9, I think that we need to go back and re-verify that and bring it forward just to keep everything clean and accurate. Because it was a highly discussed thing to try, and if we were ever going to have the opportunity to be the below one, that was likely to be it. I remember that, but if either the minutes were incorrect or it is now, one or the other should be adjusted to reflect reality anyway. So we have a motion before us for. Go ahead, Chief Cody.
So if you're reviewing the minutes, the request for decision talks about a 0.9% as the recommended option. So that's following the November 25th direction, but the actual motion for those December 9th minutes, both in the sidebar and in the actual recorded motion, do talk about an increase in revenue through an additional 0.1% tax increase totaling a 1.0% tax increase. So I am confident that both the minutes and the video reflect that 1%.
Councillor Ruka?
Sorry, thank you. CAO Gowdy, which minutes are you looking at, just out of curiosity?
So I'm looking at the December 9th
Okay.
City Council meeting minutes under page 2, at the top of page 2. The motion is moved by Councillor Connick. The council adopt the 2020 operating budget as amended to include, there's a number of items which
You're right
here, and an increase in revenue through an additional 0.1% tax increase totaling a 1.0% tax increase.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate you bringing it forward and we get that figured out as well. Before us, we have consideration for second reading for, what's the number here, Bylaw 479. Any additional comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is unanimous, I believe. And do we want to consider additional at this time or no? Councillor Ross?
Vicar McCreasy, I'll move that council give third reading to Bylaw 479.
Thank you. Any additional input? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Thank you, Senior Manager Reyes, we appreciate it. And while we've got you on this hot seat there, the tax penalty bylaw amendment, bylaw 379.1. We might just as well do it as well.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. On March 23rd, administration presented council with a number of options geared towards providing financial relief to the city's ratepayers. One of the options that council approved was the extension of the property tax deadline from June 30th to December 31st. By extending this deadline, the city is waiving penalties for the remaining of the year. And those penalties that we are referring are the current year penalties or penalties on those accounts that would remain unpaid after the deadline that were levied in 2020. Any other taxes that are that remain unpaid that relate to prior years, they still will be subject to penalties. This bylaw will be capturing those changes. So basically for the month of July, September, and November, we will not be applying any penalties to any taxes that tax accounts that remain unpaid. And it's mainly because we extended it to the end of December 2020. This had an estimated impact in revenue of $143,000. That's the amount that we would have otherwise collected if those penalties were to be imposed in 2020. When we combine all penalties and this lost revenue, and we compare 2019 to 2020, the net impact to the tax penalty revenue will be approximately $111,000 from 2019 to 2020. And tonight, administration is recommending that council give first reading to bylaw 379.1, which is an amending bylaw to the original bylaw 379. At the end of December, we will be bringing another amendment to bring penalties back in 2021 to what they normally would be. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I'll make that motion that council give first reading to bylaw 379.1.
Thank you. So for first reading consideration, I will call a question. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Anybody have any questions or we can proceed? Interested in second or no? Councillor Ross?
I will move that council will give second reading to bylaw 379.1.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns from anyone?
I just have a quick,
Councillor Gullickson.
yeah, thank you, Mayor Christie. Quick question. Do you have an estimate? Some of these penalties, people will still not pay at the end of this anyway, and then you'll be collecting penalties again. That'll be on the next year though? Yeah, so it won't be reflected. So we're looking at more for the following year, potentially.
Potentially, yes. Councillor Jacobs? Oh, I'm sorry, just a minute.
So it may not be lost revenue. It may just not be in this budget year then.
But still lost revenue for this year.
Yes, for this year. Yeah, but we may have extra penalties next year because those same people may not pay.
Well, it won't be, theoretically, it's not necessarily actually, but no, your point's taken for sure. Councillor Jacobson?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there is any urgency to this, because I can think of several examples, even last council, where as a matter of practice, we deferred doing all three readings for decision in one sitting. So I'm wondering why we're doing all three now.
I wasn't aware that we were doing all three.
Oh, you'd asked for a second, sorry.
I didn't ask, I asked if we were considering it.
I apologize. I thought
it's just that with first reading, then we're theoretically, we're not supposed to be discussing it and asking questions. But if we do second, if anybody has questions, you can bring them forward then. That's the only reason I even asked. Councillor Hoekstra, did you have something? No.
Thank you.
So before us, then we do for consideration, we do have second reading. And your point is well taken, Councillor Jacobson, that it would be a little unusual to do all three on something like this, in my opinion at least. But second is not certainly not a problem. Whether we do first this evening and second and third in future, or first and second this evening and third in future is kind of irrelevant, other than the fact that we can discuss, should anybody wish to, if we do a second reading this evening. So I'm not seeing any questions. I will call for all those in favor on second reading of bylaw, whatever that is, 3791. Is that correct? That was unanimous, I believe. So now we are free to discuss if there's anything at this particular time. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just I guess a question for administration. Would there be any questions or concerns that citizens may feel that they want to bring forward if we do, if we delay third reading to the next council or next meeting, or is there, like as Councillor Jacobson brought forward, as to unusual to do all three readings in one evening? In this particular case, is there any question, concerns that any taxpayer, business, and so forth would may have a concern that would bring forward?
It's certainly, it's possible. However, you are putting a leniency, the variance is a leniency on the tax bylaw. So I imagine there would be significant pushback, but I would just, I guess, remind you that if you were to desire to move to third reading, you will need first to pass a motion to move to 3 readings tonight, because it is beyond just unusual for 3 readings at a meeting. It's actually against your procedural bylaw to do so without that assenting vote.
So the next item that we have for request for decision is item 5.4, local improvement and tax policy. Manager Mitchell is here. You're off of the, just like magic, you're off the screen and joining us here in person. Please make yourself comfortable, and the floor is yours when you've had a few moments to prepare.
Thank you. Tracy? So before council today is a proposed local improvement tax policy. This policy is meant to be a framework to ensure that all local improvement taxes are applied in a fair and equitable manner. Despite that, council will still be able to modify any of the terms of payment, methods of assessment, and apportionment of costs of the individual project based on what's put in the policy. A local improvement is defined as a project that benefits one neighborhood more than the municipality as a whole. And so a local improvement tax is used to collect payment for such a project in part or in whole from that particular neighborhood. Now, the city does typically complete an annual capital works program, and the projects selected for that program might be considered a local improvement by some, but they are based on priority and available funding, so they would fall outside the local improvement tax policy. This policy won't be used to replace that program, but rather supplement it. This policy would come into effect when projects are identified that represent a change in the level of service for an area that is not yet due for a renewal. So this might be a new sidewalk, street lights, paving of a lane, that kind of project. The exception is when the city is completing a full road reconstruction project. Those typically happen every 40 to 60 years and are often determined by the condition of the utilities underground. At that time, administration may recommend an improvement such as a new sidewalk to bring that area in line with the current design guidelines. The Municipal Government Act, or the MGA, provides a clear definition on how a local improvement tax may be implemented. The steps for a local improvement tax include preparing a local improvement plan that identifies who will pay the local improvement tax, how the tax will be assessed, what the cost sharing between the residents and the city will be, the estimated cost of the project, the term over which the payment will be levied, and the interest rate that will be applied. Once that's prepared, administration is to provide notification to all persons who will be liable to pay that local improvement tax. That notification will include all of those items I listed before. At that time, residents will be allowed 30 days to submit a petition objecting to the local improvement. For a petition to be valid, at least 2/3 of the residents who represent at least half the value of the local improvement tax must sign that petition. If a successful petition is not received within 30 days, then council may proceed with the local improvement by passing a local improvement bylaw for that project. Now, last year, we brought a local improvement plan to council for their consideration, and we received some feedback. The council would like to see more opportunity for public feedback before we proceed with the local improvement plan. To that end, we have added a few additional steps to our policy that are not contained in the MGA. These include, prior to council's review of the plan, before they endorse it, administration will send a letter of intent to impacted landowners to solicit feedback. Landowners will be given 30 days to submit comments in writing so that those can be presented to council along with the plan the very first time. Then we've also added another step before the first reading of the tax bylaw. At this time, the residents will have received 2 letters, the notice of intent and the letter outlining all of the details of the plan. They're invited to a public hearing before council has the first reading of the local improvement bylaw. Now, in addition to outlining the procedure, the local improvement policy before you outlines the maximum terms of payment for various improvements. These can be found in Table 1 of the policy. The intent of these payment periods are to ensure that the improvement is paid in full before the infrastructure begins to show signs of significant wear. Payment timelines may be adjusted where it makes sense to do so. In some cases, if there's a small payment like $20 a month, perhaps we'll cut the time in half and get that local improvement paid off faster. If it's a significant budget, we can stretch it over a few more years to make the costs a little more palatable to residents. This policy also addresses in detail how properties will be selected and assessed for improvements. Administration has selected effective frontage as the default method for determining payments, and this is consistent with many of our neighboring municipalities. Table 4 in the policy provides a framework for the apportionment of costs, which outlines the proportion between what the city and property owners will pay for each type of local improvement. In this table, administration has done something that's slightly different than our neighboring municipalities, who vary greatly in how they apportion costs, in that we differentiate between local and collector roads. The thought behind this is local roads typically only service the people that live on them. So you think of like a cul-de-sac or a dead-end road. A sidewalk there is only going to be used by the residents who live there. Whereas a collector road would service both the residents that live on them as well as all of the roads that connect to them. So if you're to do a mill and overlay or sidewalk on those roads, that would impact a lot more people. For that reason, administration is recommending that the city pay a higher portion of costs for collector roads than for improvements on local roads. And a good example of this is Fairway Drive, which was brought to council's attention last year. So if you were to look at Fairway Drive, an improvement on Fairway Drive would service not only the residents on Fairway Drive, but on J Court, Eagle Road, Green Court, T Road, Car Court, Garden Road, and Westview Drive, so a large area. Versus an improvement on one of those smaller roads such as T Road, which would only service the 8 or 9 houses on that road. This policy aligns favorably with the strategic goal of council to seek alternate sources of revenue, where the strategic goal states Lacombe is able to use available financial tools to fund its required public infrastructure investments. I would welcome any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, Manager Mitchell. Council, any questions? Councillor Kotick?
Anyway, Christy, I just wanted to commend your work on this. I especially like the color-coded steps there. I thought that was terrific. It's very clear where it's going, what the steps are, and I think it's clear to anybody who's has any questions about how this process is carried out. All they need to do is see this one page and we'll get a pretty good idea. So I I really like the way this looks, but that's all I have to say.
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you. Yeah, I would echo that as well. An excellent presentation. It's very clear. This is exactly what I think council was after when we talked about this in the past. I know I was very adamant about having a policy in place that going forward we just could be consistent. I really like this idea of the frontage. I think that's a good balancing act, I guess, on trying to address some of the issues that we had in the past. I do want to actually make the motion. I'm just trying to find it here again. That council approves the local improvement tax policy effective May 26, 2020. And I hope that it passes.
Thank you. Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Creasy. So I just had a couple of questions, but I too want to echo, you know how to write these. Give us the right information that it makes sense for us, non-engineering types. But the one, because I did pass this by a few citizens, and the question was, what is traffic calming? There's no definition, but go for it. Yeah.
Traffic calming can be various methods. You can use bulb outs, so concrete bulb outs to narrow crosswalks. Those slow vehicles down as they pass through them. They could be speed bumps.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. Rapid flashing beacons might be something that you'd also consider traffic calming, or that speed radar thing that we got out on Woodland Drive by Crana Lake. Any of those. So.
And follow up.
Certainly.
And then the other question was, which you did answer a little bit in your presentation tonight, how does this policy align with other communities, and what is the best practice? Is there a best practice out there? Because you said there's quite a bit of variance.
Yeah, definitely. So the MGA itself governs how policies are applied, so that doesn't vary too much, and other than the fact that we've added a few more areas for the community to get involved and provide feedback. As far as how the apportion costs, again, the MGA dictates that. It gives 4 options. We've picked the one that's most common from what I've seen in other local improvement tax policies. If it makes sense to, we might vary. One of the 4 options I think are by unit rates, by the value of the property, the frontage, or the area. And so we've selected frontage as the default, and if it makes sense to, we can definitely vary that. The place where it varies the most is the cost sharing. And so Director Thompson and I had a fair bit of discussion on this item, and we tried to pick proportionments that kind of seem to reflect council's desire to promote active transportation. So in some places, sidewalk, and I'm thinking Edmonton in particular here, any new sidewalk is 100% local improvement tax. They don't chip into new sidewalks at all. And replacement sidewalks is 50-50 no matter where. What we've proposed here is for a local road, 90-10 split. When we go to rebuild that road in 30 years, we'd probably put in a sidewalk. So yeah, we'll chip in a little bit of money to get it done ahead of time. But on collector roads where we really want to promote that active transportation, we've actually proposed that the city pays 70% there because it's moving forward one of your strategic plans. And again, it's something that we would likely pay for in the future when that road redeveloped.
Go ahead.
So the comment was that 90-10 is a bit high, which I guess you were maybe expecting to, like, especially, what did you say, like J Court or something, or like 8 houses. And I do realize that's a very good example of a local like a local road, but it's still, especially when not due to their fault, a developer was allowed to not put a sidewalk in, sort of like that. So was there any appetite for that being like 80-20 or 70-30 the other way?
So I'm open to council's feedback for this, but I will say when they bought that property at a price that reflected not having had a sidewalk installed. So when that lot was originally developed, if the developer had to put a sidewalk in then, that lot would have cost them more. And that gets passed down with the value of the property. Maybe gets fudged a little bit over the years, and 40 years later, it doesn't matter quite as much. But at the time of development, they got a cheaper lot, so.
It just had to be said publicly. Thank you.
Anyone else? Sounds like to me Director Thompson owes you a lunch one of these fine days, because this was very good information and being concise, just the way that I'd like to do them all. So thank you for that, both of you. Appreciate it. So who moved? Councillor Hibbs did. Thank you very much. Any additional questions? If not, I will have Coordinator Pettibone, could you read back the motion, please?
Certainly, Mayor Creasy, that council approve the local improvement tax policy effective May 26, 2020 by Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you very much. Any last minute comments or questions? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Your next item up, Manager Mitchell, is the 2020 Capital Works Construction Award.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So before council is a request to approve the cost for the 2020 and 2021 Capital Works program. The 2020 Capital Works program includes 3 major projects, which are North Star Drive, which is replacement of deep utilities, storm, water, and sanitary sewer, as well as the reconstruction of the road. Brownstone Road, which is the reconstruction of the road due to the heaving of the storm line underneath it, which makes it undrivable in winter conditions, and the reconstruction of Highway Street Phase 1. 2021 will include the reconstruction of Highway Street Phases 2 and 3. The 2020 Capital Works program also includes 3 minor projects, which are the frost heave repair at CNE Trail and 63rd Ave, alley drainage improvements between 50 and 51st Street, and drainage improvements for 45A Street in West Jackson Industrial Park. At this time, administration is also proposing for council's consideration the advancement of Phase 2 of Highway Street reconstruction, which is the section in front of No Frills, into this year's Capital Works program. This was originally planned for next year, but as anyone who's driven that road can tell, the freeze-thaw cycles this spring really accelerated the deterioration of the asphalt there. And so we have talked to the contractor, and he has confirmed that it is feasible to complete 2 of the 3 phases this year. The 3rd phase is possible, but not probable, depending on weather conditions. The last several summers, we've had a lot of rain in the middle of construction season, and if we got that again, it would not would not permit completion of the 3rd section of Highway Street. The combined 2021 Capital Works program came in significantly under budget at $5 million. Had this same project been tendered 4 years ago, we would have expected to see costs exceeding $7 million. So the city is now projecting an approximate $1.3 million savings for under budget, I should say, for Capital Works over the next 2 years. This presents an opportunity to take advantage of the highly competitive construction rates to complete a strategic project that's been identified by council but currently remains unfunded. That's the Len Thompson paving and 55th Avenue paving. So there are 3 sections of gravel road that are remaining in Len Thompson Industrial Park, as illustrated in Figure 2 of this RFP. These are Len Thompson Drive north of Wolf Creek Drive, which is the area that heads towards Len Thompson Fish Pond, Len Thompson Drive south of Wolf Creek Drive, and 55th Avenue. Since no design or geotech has been completed at this time, the estimate to pave these sections of road varies widely from anywhere from $825,000 on the low end to $1.65 million on the high end. And the low end would represent basically the road structure being in good shape, just needing to put a little gravel down to even it out and put asphalt down, where the high end would represent really having to build that gravel road structure, do some ditch grading to promote drainage. With the current under budget costs, the city could pave at least 2 or possibly all 3 sections of road, depending on where that design came in. If a local improvement tax was applied, then we could pave all 3 sections. Administration proposes that at this time, council budget the excess funds for the 2020 and 2021 Capital Works projects for this project and direct administration to proceed with detailed design. Then this fall, when design is complete and costs are known, administration will bring this project back to council for their consideration to decide whether or not to proceed as a fully funded project, as a local improvement, or not to proceed at all. There are a couple other design considerations that council should be aware of in the 2020 Capital Works program. The first is the inclusion of sidewalk on Brownstone Road. There currently is no sidewalk on Brownstone Road between Onyx Ave and 63rd Ave. In alignment with Council's strategic goal 4.3.1 to make Lacombe a walkable city, administration explored several options to include a pedestrian connection in this area. There is space on the west side of the road to install a sidewalk without changing the current road configuration. However, that would require the relocation of several shallow utilities and the construction of a retaining wall, which would cost in excess of $150,000. Construction of the sidewalk alone would be about $40,000. On the east side of the road, several airport hangars have been built that encroach on the road right away. So to construct the sidewalk on that side, we would have to require those owners to relocate their hangars, and it would not provide a continuous connection with the sidewalk that's already installed on the west side to the north. So because of these considerations, administration is recommending that council accept a modified road cross section as shown in figure 4, which would narrow the width of the carriageway, which is the paved section of road, and remove the parking lot lane along the east side of the road and install a sidewalk on the west side. And that parking lane is highly underutilized as it's alongside the airport and it's fenced off completely, so nobody can access the airport from that area at the moment. The second design consideration is the inclusion of a new sidewalk on North Star Drive. Administration developed this to be consistent with the local improvement tax policy, which you just considered, in that it's a full road reconstruction project. So therefore, we are implementing a new sidewalk to bring it up to current design or closer to current design guideline standards. The final design consideration is the Woodland Drive and Highway 2A intersection. Administration occasionally receives comments or concerns from the public regarding queuing lengths or safety issues at this intersection. With the rebuilding of Highway Street, administration reviewed 3 options to improve the safety at this intersection, which include the installation of a median along Woodland Drive, or closing the service road accesses to Woodland Drive completely and installing a right-in, right-out access mid-block on each side, or a combination of the two, which would be a median on Woodland Drive and new right-in, right-out accesses. The objective of these was to reduce congestion at this intersection and improve safety by reducing turning movements between Woodland Drive and Highway Street. All 3 of these scenarios improved the safety of the intersection, but they did it at the cost of forcing traffic down to the intersections on either side at Dickens Lane and Heritage Way. Neither of those intersections are currently signalized, and so this created more congestion and safety issues at those 2 intersections. In addition, they significantly impacted the performance, inconvenienced residents, and restricted access to businesses along the Highway Street. For these reasons, administration is not recommending any significant changes to the intersection to be completed with the 2021 Capital Works program. However, we will be optimizing signal timing and formalizing a dedicated right turn lane and a through left turn lane, though they tend to already operate that way, with line painting at this time. And our modeling indicates that these minor adjustments should result in some substantial improvements to the efficiency of this intersection. Further consideration for the design of this intersection will likely be required at the 17,500 population design horizon, and that's about 10 years from now. As mentioned earlier, the combined 2020 and 2021 Capital Works project came in significantly under budget this year. 3 bids were received, and the lowest at $4.6 million was 28% lower than the second lowest bid. The engineering fees for design and construction represent 12% of the construction value, and material testing services, CCTV inspections, and shallow utility locates represent an additional 2.3%. Tables 1 through 3 in your RFD offer the cost breakdowns for 3 award options. The first option is to award the project as tendered. The second option is to award the project as tendered, but include the advancement of phase 2 of Highway Street, so the section in front of No Frills, into this year. And option C includes option B plus consideration for the paving of Glen Thompson, up to a maximum value of $1.3 million. All 3 options allow the 2-year project to be completed on budget. I would welcome any questions you have at this time.
Thank you. Someone wants some clarification. Forgive me for stepping back. As I was going through this on, with respect to the improvement, you had talked about frontage and basing some of the apportionment costs on frontage, and I was curious, how does that work for either residential or commercial, industrial, whatever, for corner lots? Is there only one frontage street, or is there 2?
Yep, so in the local improvement policy, it does differentiate between residential and commercial lots. Residential lots would only be charged 1, a corner lot, maximum 1. But for commercial lots, they would be charged for both sides. And one of the reasons behind this is commercial lots, especially in Glen Thompson, some of the larger ones, have the ability to subdivide. And when they do subdivide, some of those larger lots might be serviced off of one street or another, depending on how they subdivide. And at that time, those properties would receive the value of having a paved street.
So does it make sense to do it at the time if in fact they choose to subdivide? Or just to have the option of it? Just seems like an interesting distinction there. I'm curious, how does that?
Sure,
Director Thompson?
In the example that Manager Mitchell highlighted, it wouldn't make sense to defer that to when they subdivide, because they implement a local improvement tax on that new parcel. We would have to create a new local improvement bylaw to impose that tax. If we excluded them now and then brought it in later, it would be a single parcel for a local improvement that was constructed and we'd already collected or are in the process of collecting. And so the MGA allows for, if the parcel is subdivided, for us to automatically transfer that portion of the taxes to that new parcel. And so if it were to be subdivided between now and, let's say we amortize the paving of Glen Thompson Drive over 10, 15 years, if the subdivision happened within that time frame, the remaining portion of that tax would be applied to the new parcel only and not on the parent parcel.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Councillor Connick?
Yeah, I had some comments, but I just wanted to follow up on your comments, because the way I look at it, it looks like if it's been previously charged, it's deducted from, but if it hasn't been, so for example, if a property is on Wolf Creek Drive and on Glen Thompson, the frontage on Wolf Creek Drive would be subtracted from what they have to pay. It's just the frontage on Glen Thompson.
They would pay the difference. So
okay, so that's
forgive me. I'm gonna reference the local improvement policy and refresh myself. If you have it in front of you, Table 3 does define that. So yes, the corner lots would be assessed for the same improvement on the flankage side. So.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Otherwise, I support the 5 motions as written here. I think it's always exciting when you get significantly underpriced quotations, and that's exciting. We have some savings that we could utilize for the projects. I'm especially excited about proceeding with the detailed design from Lynn Thompson. This has been something that has been in my entire time on council, something that's been on the radar, and previous councils have not been able to address this successfully. So it's my hope that this council will move in this direction to get that done finally, because I think it affects, our ability to sell lots, for example, in Glen Thompson Industrial Park, if that's not paid. So I'm really excited to see that. I didn't want to muddy the waters a little bit, but I wonder if there was any consideration to address the quagmire on CNE Trail North when you head out of town. The road turns into a soupy mess, and then I've been traveling on that road quite a few times the last couple of weeks. And you don't do that slowly and carefully, you're gonna end up in the ditch. Has there been any consideration to try and do something with that outside of this year, or I know it's not really part of this, but.
Chief Gotti?
Oh, maybe Manager Mitchell might have something to say.
I have some happy news for you, I think. Thursday, you'll see paving crews out there fixing the worst portion of that section of road. So the area, I know which one you're referring to. So we've got about 150 meters worth of the really bad part of that road that will be addressed, which will serve as a Band-Aid to extend the life of that road until the full redevelopment of it can happen. And it is in the 10-year capital plan. Forgive me, I think it starts in 2024, but I wouldn't quote that for sure.
No, and I appreciate that, sorry. And I appreciate that. It's just, I hope the Band-Aid is better than the previous Band-Aids is my only thing. Like, I would sooner rip that out and put gravel there, for Pete's sake, than let's try.
It's an 8-strength asphalt repair, so it's not just a 50 millimeter, it's 8 inches of asphalt, so it should hold up.
Sorry, I know that's all.
Chief Gotti?
So it's 8 inches of asphalt on 5 feet of black dirt. So the issue there is that is actually a very low volume road. And so your suggestion to just transfer it to gravel until time comes to make an arterial roadway is not, it's not actually that far off base. It is very tough to justify significant investments in that road until further development happens.
But I was going to say the same thing. Given the amount of traffic that's on there, it's a tough thing to justify. That's many millions of dollars to redo that entire road, and for the amount of traffic that it sees, that's not something that I think that many councils are going to be able to justify in the immediate future.
And I wasn't just doing the whole thing. I was just that one little piece there. It's just. Wow.
Well, with the deep strength repair, I think you'll be, or the public at large will be pleasantly surprised with the difference anyway. Director Thompson.
I just wanted to add to Manager Mitchell's comments that the reason why we are doing that paving on CNE Trail this year is because it's tied to the outlet that was installed on Henderson, and so they had to go through the road. It was open cut. The repair there, so we took advantage of that road being closed and expanded the repair as much as we could.
Seeing as how you mentioned it, when can we expect pumping to begin on the Henderson project?
That will be next year. The project is fully installed, but the ditch needs some time for vegetation to establish before we start running water through it. Otherwise, it will just wash out.
Very good. No, I just had some people asking, so next year's when it is, and that's fine. Thank you. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. So I had questions about the local improvement tax regarding Glen Thompson Road. So what's the city going to declare there? Is that a collector road or is that a local road? Is that?
Director Thompson.
So that is a good question. It is probably more a local road than a collector road in that area. However, we want to button up our estimates right now. They're quite wide. And so for us to estimate the rates to the businesses in that area there's kind of a broad range there. And so we will have a recommendation for council this fall on a percentage. But as Manager Mitchell highlighted, maybe she didn't, maybe we just talked about it, a 30% to be covered by the businesses, 70% is what will be required to keep the costs within the city's current capital budget.
Okay, maybe that wasn't here. Yeah, sorry.
You had a follow-up,
Yes.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Because, yeah, I guess, because what Councillor Connick said too, and I was thinking, isn't this one that's more beneficial to the city for sure? Like, because we keep wanting to market the lots and when it's gravel and it's, so I guess I would rather it just got paid, but anyhow, yeah.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Has there not been some support of already existing businesses in support of a levy to get that done from? No, I thought there was some feedback from already existing businesses that they would be in favor of a levy to be of their benefit to have that road approved. Is that?
The feedback has been quite some years in your previous administration and council, and tried unsuccessfully to put forward a scenario where the local landowners were expected to pay the full cost recovery basis, and that was not received well. I would suggest understandably. So we will not go there. Expect that this goes substantially better, and I think that the scenario that they have worked out from the few that I've spoken with directly will be far better received, and I don't think that we will have significant opposition, but time will tell. Everybody's within their rights to do so, and that will play out in time. But this is a far more palatable scenario than was wielded previously. I see a hand up over here as well, Samara? Or no? Councillor Kodak?
Well, I can start us in on these motions. I'm prepared to move the first one.
Can I ask one question before? My apologies for interrupting. So that all the motions would total up 4C, is that correct?
One more time.
All the motions that could be possibly made, as Councillor Connick is starting to do, that would basically be the 4C option. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm just one.
Muddy the waters. Councillor Kodak?
Yeah, I don't, okay. Where was I? Sorry. I would move that that council advance the reconstruction of Highway Street as proposed and award the 2021 Capital Works Program Construction Contract to Border Paving at a cost of $4,606,494.
Anything additional on this item? Councillor Hoekstra?
Sorry, so my question then is that firm? That's a firm number now? Like, and if we make a motion on it, we couldn't somehow, like, is this that as low as it can go right now? I don't know, just throwing it out there. It's pretty low.
I think it would be unrealistic to expect it to be lower, but
okay.
I would also suggest there is probably circumstances when it could go slightly higher as well if there's unforeseen circumstances. Right. But I think that we need to bear in mind that this was substantially lower than the other bids as well.
That's right.
Director Thompson?
So our capital programs, they do include a 10% contingency for unforeseen circumstances. We do endeavor to keep that unspent, but there are things that come up during the construction period that we utilize those funds for. But as Manager Mitchell said, this project bid or tendered a few years ago would have been around $7 million. So the price is really.
So prior to voting this one, I want to publicly disclose once again, as I always do, that when it comes to this particular company, I have a brother that works for this company, a longtime employee there. He does not, however, have any relationship whatsoever to the work done in this area. It runs their operations out of Hinton, but better to be safe than sorry, so then nobody thinks there's anything interesting going on here. So yeah, with that being said, is there any additional comments or concerns with the motion number 1A as outlined by Councillor Kodak? Seeing none, I will ask the question. All those in favor? None opposed. That was unanimous. Ross, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. I'll make motion number 2 then. That council direct administration to enter into a contract with Stantec Consulting for project management, construction and post-construction engineering services at a cost of $330,192 plus GST.
Thank you. Any comments or concern with that motion? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Councillor Hoekstra?
I move that council direct administration to enter into a contract with Parkland Geotechnical Consulting Limited for materials testing during construction at a cost of $59,490 plus GST.
Anything further? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Councillor Konik?
I would move that council direct administration to proceed with the detailed design for the paving of Len Thompson Drive and 55th Ave in 2020-2021 capital works program.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on that potential project? I will call the question then. All those in favor? None opposed? Thank you. Councillor Hibbs?
I would love to make that last motion, that council accept the modified cross-section for Brownstone Road as proposed.
Thank you. Drive by that every day. I'm almost like you've driven that road.
Yeah, my kids walk down it and everything else.
Any additional comment on that motion? Questions? I will call the question then. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, that was unanimous as well. Thank you. Appreciate it, Manager. And we will. I'm sorry, Manager Mitchell, I would add you down for the street sweeper. That is Director Thompson. If you would care to continue with item for request for decision of Council 5.6, the street sweeper purchase award, please.
So before council today is the recommendation to proceed with the replacement of the city's street sweeper. The roads department has tendered the replacement of that sweeper, and the recommended bidder, Joe Johnson Equipment, including warranty and including the options with that street sweeper. The unit comes in under budget. That also includes a trade-in value of our current unit of just under $50,000. And we are recommending council approve the replacement unit.
Thank you, Director Thompson. I have a couple of questions on this item. Does the proposed new unit have the hydraulic watering system that the previous one did? The reason I asked that,
same manufacturer.
I realize that.
And it is, seeing on the options list, there are water side boom function control. Sorry, I don't know this.
Because the reason I know that is from signing checks. The last one was a pile of junk. And I had several conversations with Joe Johnson Equipment, to which I believe they put forth a reasonable effort to correct it. And I just, now that it has been corrected and whatnot, I just wanted to ensure that the new one does not have the same type of pumping system on it, because it was very problematic and overkill.
I can assure you our roads manager and the mechanic at the time were well aware of those issues and having to repair them. And I know we were working to the best, or they were working to the best of their ability to have the manufacturer foot the bill as much as we could.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have no doubt that played a significant factor into the decision today to go with that manufacturer again, and that has been included and addressed in this recommendation to purchase.
And a bit of a flyer. This is an American-built item.
Elgin, yeah.
From Illinois, I believe. So are there no Canadian manufacturers of this particular equipment? Not that I have anything against American-built iron, but I would prefer if it was Canadian.
Certainly. Manufacturer of the equipment is from the States. Joe Johnson is a Canadian company based out of Ontario. They've bid on the project, met our requirements, and our bid requirements did not require a Canadian made piece of equipment. So,
No, I'm not suggesting there's anything improper there. Are there Canadian manufacturers of this equipment? Probably not sure. That's okay. So what's the replacement schedule on this particular item? Does it fall in the 8-year program too, or is it?
It's on a 10-year program. This particular unit, this is year 12.
Okay. So I didn't talk to the administration on this before. I'm wondering if on this particular item, if we should consider having 2 and keeping this one and doing a replacement every 5 years or whatever of one or the other. It just seems that we spend an awful lot of time. This is the kind of thing that our seasons are relatively short and we want it done now. I just wondering if that would be helpful, or if that's been considered to do 2 of them, and we're only getting $50,000 for it anyway, which is not significant considering the amount of maintenance and wear and tear that are on these things. I'm just wondering if that would be a viable option.
I think it's a viable option. I would have to confer to the roads department and whether they can manage 2 units running simultaneously in the spring and the fall. And then with this current unit, I think it's alluded to, there still are showing its age with repair bills. And so if council is looking at increasing that level of service to address street sweeping much quicker in the spring and then clean up in the fall as well, then that's something we would want to, I think, take back and determine whether this one is the right thing. We can, though, however, look at that before we trade this one in and see if we can, if that makes sense. But
well, I would like for council to consider that, because I think that the idea of us purchasing another new one in a couple more years to have the 2 to offset is rather unlikely, but to keep a $50,000 one, I mean, quite frankly, if we have to run it until it blows up, it's not the end of the world.
So given the replacement value, it would that is factored into the recommended price as the trading value. So council should be aware of that.
Yep.
If we wish to keep the current unit, we can explore that concurrently and then bring back a recommendation to council. But in the meantime, the trading value or the purchase value would be $50,000 higher than what is this.
Understood. Yeah. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Although with the purchase price being a cash price, no trade price could be lower. If you tender it out without a trade, that could possibly change the numbers as well.
Good point, thank you. Chief Gotti?
It could. I would just warn you, because I've seen this creep over the years where we keep a second piece of equipment and then it comes time that one does die, it does blow up. And I've never seen it happen that actually just, okay, we'll go back to having one. There's always a need, like you said, to go to, okay, instead of a 10-year replacement for one, we're now on 5-year replacements. And so if you add in another one of these units at $330,000 on a 5-year replacement, you are increasing the capital contribution that's going to be required out of the operating budget by about $60,000 a year if you were to replace that unit. So holding on to it today doesn't have a major cost, it's the $50,000, but to move that into the fleet replacement budget so that we can provide that service is going to be about that, probably $65,000 a year with the insurance and the CVIPs that are required for that second year.
We also have to consider that they will last significantly longer too. If we got 12 years out of this one, if it's only working half as much, it's going to last significantly longer too. So it's true. I really think that we should at least pursue this to check into it, because I don't think it's in the community's best interest to have street sweepers running all year long just to try and catch up from the spring stuff to working in the fall. It's just, I think it's a problem, but Councillor Hibbs?
I was just going to comment that, of course, as was mentioned, if you have 2, that means you're manning 2 and all the things that go with that. And honestly, the other big complaint at this time of year, you got the street sweeping because people want to get out on the motorbikes, and then you've got potholes. And honestly, I'd rather have more people working on potholes because that's dangerous to like everybody. Street sweeping, it just means you're not getting your motorbike out as fast, you know? So I think that needs to be considered. So when this does come back, I hope that that really does get, you know, included in the conversation. So what that impact would look like.
Director Thompson?
The other part of the equation that we want to look at least just to satisfy ourselves, is what I'm hearing is increased level of sweeping service. And so can we bring in a contractor maybe initially for a couple of weeks to hit certain areas, high volume areas, and have our crews be maybe in the local streets or something. Like, there's another way to address that that we probably want to look at as well. Certainly doesn't make sense to go fully to a contracted unit. And we've looked at that, and it doesn't make sense to lease the unit. But in terms of a blend, maybe it's at less than $60,000 and we don't have a unit just sitting for a year. We want to look at that too.
Thank you. Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. I noticed the crews are working on the weekend. So we're putting overtime in to do this, or are they on shift?
The staff are on, they've been cohorted into different work groups to make sure to minimize the chance of any sort of cross transmission if there is a positive case of COVID on the crew. And so they're working 4 on, 4 off.
And so that's why they were on the weekends. Okay, so there was no overtime involved as such.
Yeah, not that no.
I just thought if we had 2 machines, we wouldn't have to do that.
We have, we have had instances where we've double shifted the sweeper before to try and get it done, for sure.
Councillor Ross?
Kind of, to make a motion moving forward, could we defer this to next council after we have more information upon, does that kind of affect purchase price with no trade and so forth, or what direction, let's have some direction moving forward and what area where so we can move on. I guess this is kind of hearing a lot of discussion, but not specific.
Fair enough. Chief Gotti, what would you recommend in this instance?
I assume that we have sufficient time to bring this back to council without validating the quote, 90-day validity period or something. So we can just bring it back with some comparative options for you to look at and what some of those pricing of the different options might look at a high level, and give you the options at a future council meeting, one of your next, if that's your preference.
Councillor Jacobson.
Just to be clear on that, I would imagine it goes without saying, but if we're going to bring that back, I would like a very clear outline of any additional operational impact cost that's going to have, because frankly, while I appreciate the need for greater efficiency, I would definitely not be in favor of increasing any operating costs at this time in our budget cycle of what's going on economically. But as long as that can be clearly delineated, I appreciate that information when it's brought back.
Very good. If anybody cares to make a motion as such, then that would be fine. Councillor Ross?
I'll make a motion that administration pursue further information for a next council meeting. Is that in regard to
the street sweeper purchase?
Yes.
Very good.
Sorry, I don't know how to be more specific.
It works.
Okay.
Any additional comments? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you, appreciate it. Item 5.7, the RFP award for the dry cooler at the LMC. Director Juke.
I guess I'll deliver from here. Everybody hear me okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. The subject of this presentation is award of a contract to supply and install a dry cooler at the Lacombe Memorial Centre. This project was included in the 2020 capital budget due to problems of overheated rooms experienced by users of the LMC in winter when the air conditioning chiller is shut down and there is no effective way to cool rooms that are overheated by large numbers of people. The budget for the project is $115,000. This amount was suggested in consultation with the city's building maintenance contractor in 2019. However, in Q1 of 2020, the city issued a request for proposal for supply and install of a unit. 7 proposals came in with the lowest 3 price between 26 and 43% over budget. A list of the proposals received can be found on page 2 of the request for decision that you have before you tonight. And all proponents stated that an assessment of the weight-bearing capacity of the LMC roof was required before installation due to dry coolers weighing over 100 tons. All proponents also stated that the roof assessment and any reinforcement required were not included in their pricing.
It's a cooling capacity, yes, you're correct.
Some proponents suggested alternate solutions, leading administration to believe that a more thorough assessment of the problem and potential solutions was advisable through an engineered assessment. However, roof assessment and alternate solutions were not included in the original project scope. With an assessment added to the project scope at a cost of about $12,000, potentially lower cost solutions may be found, and certainly the full cost of a dry cooler installation will be known before the city proceeds. Administration is therefore requesting that council authorize the amended project scope and direct administration to bring the matter back to council with the additional information. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Director Juke. So just for clarity, the cooling capacity of the unit is measured in tons, 100 tons. That does not suggest that the unit weighs 100 tons in weight.
My apologies.
Oh.
They are very heavy units,
Did think that
but they sure as heck don't weigh 100 tons. No. It might be several thousand pounds. In any event, point's taken that the roof has to be able to hold the unit up. So
yes,
thank you. Councillor Hoekstra?
I'll move that council accepts the request for decision to award a contract for supply and install of a dry cooler at the LMC as information.
Thank you. Any additional comments or concerns? Myself, I know this has been an ongoing issue since the unit was first, or the building was first built, so it would be a welcome enhancement. It's a little unrealistic to expect a room that holds 400 or 500 people or whatever the heck it is to not experience some significant heat loading in a hurry, regardless of the temperature outdoors. So it would be very welcome by large groups for sure. Nothing additional. All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. Councillor Connick?
And I also move that council directs administration to amend the scope of the dry cooler capital project to include an engineering assessment of options to address the heat issues and determine the roof weight bearing capabilities.
Thank you. Any additional comments? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. I think that's it for request for decision. We move on to the information portion, items number 6, specifically 6.1. We'll start with the Chief Administrative Officer report. And I just, before you start, Chief Gotti, I wanted to thank Director Thompson for your efforts in running the ship while Chief Gotti was away on vacation this last couple of weeks. We appreciate your efforts there. Floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Yes, the same. Thanks. And Director Thompson did put together this significant events report in my absence. So if there's any questions, one of the two of us will be able to handle it. But of course, street sweeping is a topic tonight, and that does continue throughout the community. I see we're getting into the local area, local roads. So I too have been waiting on my motorbike. I'm looking forward to bringing it out. Pass on the kudos to the staff for that. Any questions about the monthly significant events report?
Councillor Connick?
well, excuse my indulgence, I know it's not on the list per se, but I had a question. I turn on the 58th Street off of Woodland Drive and heading south. You got Shepherd's Close, you have the dry stormwater pond, and then you have a piece of land in between that and the road that looks like it's been cultivated. What's the plan for that?
Those are community gardens, and there are already, I don't know what you call them, tenants, I guess.
They're allocated?
Yeah, they're allocated.
I was hoping you'd say that, because I think that's an excellent use of that particular side. That's all, I just was curious, sorry.
FCSS.
It is.
Councillor Rose, did you?
Well,
you have
my
a
question was, is FCSS overseeing that chunk too? Okay,
Yes, they are.
that piece too.
Councillor Hibbs?
I have a few questions, actually. The lawn at the LMC on like facing, where Music in the Park would be. So of course, that appears to be damaged from when we had the skating rink in, and I see snow fencing has been put around it. Has there been some measures taken like for mitigating that, like getting it back, repairing, getting it back to what it was?
Yes, I know the staff are working not just to repair the damage, but to mitigate damage from future years. It was a very popular activity there, but we hadn't expected quite the level of damage that there has been. So we're looking at how we can do that. Fortunately, there is a lot of information out there about how other communities and groups have done it, so we're confident.
That was going to be the second half of that question. Okay, perfect. Another question I have is black knot. Now, that is obviously an issue in this community, as everybody knows. I've been contacted by a few people saying that they have, seen areas where this is, attempted to report it, and to be told by bylaw that there is nothing that can be done. Now, I do recall that we did recently revamp that bylaw, and it specifically does talk about fungus. So I guess I would request perhaps that there would just be some follow-up to make sure that it is understood that black knot is a fungus and therefore would be covered in the bylaw by our intention and by my reading. So I would just look into that. So, because either I have a number of community people, steering me wrong, or there's a little bit of miscommunication. So I just would pass that on. And I think, that is all the questions I have. Thank you.
Appreciate you bringing both those forward earlier today as well. And just didn't have time to get to the black knot one, but my recollection of the battle was the same as yours. I do believe that, in fact, that ought to be enforced, and we do have a methodology in place to do so. But I'm sure that Chief Gotti will send us out an email notification of that once he has ascertained the correct information. All right, thank you. Anybody else on the CAO report? Any questions there? If not, we will move on to some Government of Alberta memos from the seniors in housing on May 8th and May 15th. Anybody have any questions or concerns with either of those documents? Councillor Hoekstra? No? Very good. And the North Red Deer River Waters minutes from November 4th. Anybody have any questions on that, or the ones from December 9th or February 24th? Councillor Hoekstra?
I just had a question about delay. Why are we not receiving these minutes sooner? I don't know.
It's a very fair question. When I read all four of the dates, I thought, from November 4th is not really performance, is it? There was some administrative issues then that are perfectly explainable. I don't expect this will continue in the future. Director Thompson, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, the staff member who does them. So we had the November 4th meeting, and then between November 4th and December 9th, the staff member that does the minutes was actually injured and off work for a while, and so was unable to do the December 9th minutes. And then we had a special meeting of February 24th. And so we typically don't adopt minutes on special meetings. And so all three got carried to the next one and where they were all adopted and now they're.
Makes sense.
And as I said, given that this is an unusual thing, we just didn't think it was worth a special meeting just to adopt minutes and keep it moving forward. That's one reason they've kind of piled up into one go here. Reports, I didn't look at the live version of the reports. Who would like to start with those?
I don't have one.
Councilor Rosen?
One meeting with Culture and Tourism, it was very short and brief. Myself and Paula Law gave some feedback pertaining to the presentations. I reiterated that if there's any concerns with any communication, as CAO Gowdy and I went to our city website, and I emphasized to Culture and Tourism that we could have a more informed as the activities of Culture and Tourism to communicate with the city, and that we would be there to support them, because I think there was some CAO Gowdy and I, there was some not up-to-date community events on the heart that we feel that could have been more current. So I just emphasize them to contact CAO Gowdy, or that we would be there in support to try to improve them areas of communication. So
thank you. Certainly, if anybody has questions of any of the reports as we go around, just raise your hand. I'd be happy to move the floor then. Councillor Hoekstra.
Well, I have a big question before I say my report. Have I missed a memo that we aren't supposed to do written reports? Just saying, because I feel foolish that mine keeps coming up every time, and then I think, did I miss a memo? Are we supposed to do written reports? Could we make a public statement whether we're supposed to do them or not?
The report writing is outlined in our council policy, so.
Because I personally do like reading everybody's reports. I just want that noted. And I do like, I mean, sometimes the detail isn't necessary and sometimes it is kind of interesting. So, but when I opened my package this time and saw that I was the only one, I thought, really? Like, we can do better. That's my comment. But.
Well, I'll give you an example if we want to discuss it. I had one meeting over that period of time.
Yeah.
That was on late on the Wednesday. So I'm holding off till the next one where I'll have two reports.
Sure.
Two meetings.
Sure, but you're.
So right now it's been very quiet.
Yeah, sure. And I probably won't have one for the next one, but it's, anyhow, just thought that is part of my report that I was going to comment, but Councillor Hibbs wanted to say something or no?
Go ahead.
I would concur that yes, written reports are required. However, if you read the bylaw, it does not actually specify as to when those have to be handed in. So that's the frequency of those are up to individual councillors.
I guess I thought it was implied that it would be every meeting, but anyhow, I had 2 events plus a couple of other things, but I just wanted to update about Lacombe Foundation. There's $16 million or something coming through for seniors facilities to cover COVID, expenses due to COVID, but I just got an email today, like the foundation had $47,000 in extra expenses, but they will start looking at residences that experienced COVID and some that didn't, so they might not get that amount. Sorry, what did I?
Masks required. I was saying, what's sort of
So I was just curious how
what's the cost? What brought up?
if there's any breakdown of that.
Oh, it was primarily staffing, extra staffing for cleaning, because residents' rooms are not cleaned all the time, but now they're cleaned, I believe, twice a day, and yeah, it's significant. And then they serve all the meals in the rooms now, right? So that took extra staffing, and they've got it all broken down. I didn't give that information, but they must have had they did have warning that there could be extra funding coming through, but how that will actually be rolled out, they're hoping they'll get about 38 back. So I thought that was interesting. And then the rest is just the webinar.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So I have a question. Is that a choice by the Lacombe Foundation to deliver the meal directly to the room? Or is that a provincial standard that they have reviewed? Because I'm assuming from just by media I think provincially, federally, there's going to be a lot of reviewing upon all the facilities because there's a lot of unequal. So, because my in-laws are in Autumn Glen and it's still general gathering. So if that's the Lacombe Foundation's choice, that's kind of, like, maybe it's preventative, but it's aggressive. I guess kind of.
It was based on the number of people that were allowed to gather. So
Oh, okay.
I guess it has to do with, but yeah, because that would be more than.
Because in Innisfil, they gather more times. They don't deliver the meals. They'll have
Well, that's
more
another
than
option.
six,
Yeah.
right?
Chief Cuddy?
So I can't say specifically, I guess, but the province has released guidelines for a lot of activities, and I'm certain they have some very specific guidelines about seniors care centers. And so I would imagine, again, I can't speak for them, but that they are implementing the recommended guidelines from the province. And some may choose to vary from those guidelines. They've been quite strong on recommending things rather than saying thou shalt. And so I would imagine the Lacombe Foundation is probably implementing the majority of the recommended options, it sounds like.
Well, and I would hope the fact that they haven't had a case would give them a chance to get more money.
Weirdly, though, it would be the other way.
I know, it shouldn't be.
And I just needed
Because they're
to,
successful.
I said 16 million, but it's 170 million. But it just says it depends which ones were dealt with an outbreak or not. It's not necessarily the fault of the residents whether they dealt with an outbreak or not. We have to be very careful saying, it's a little bit like policing, what Councillor Ross was getting at. Some of it might be the demographics and where your facility is located. But anyhow, I just thought that was, as the city has also tracked expenses during COVID, right? Lots of organizations did, and we hope this will serve them well. So I just wanted to update on that.
And did you want to go over your webinar too, or no?
Well, I used the time to actually just go through the website. We heard the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hinshaw, speak, and people had some questions, but ultimately the most useful piece of attending that webinar is to have access to that website. And there's documents on there, because I reviewed even some of the webinar afterwards, but it was okay. Thanks, Mayor Creasy, for allowing me to update everybody on that.
Councillor Jacobson? Councillor Hibbs? Councillor Kunuk?
No, thanks.
Very good. I didn't have a formal report either. I think everybody's pleased to see the community starting to come back to life and businesses pick up the pieces and continue on. I guess I'll keep in line with the province and remind everybody it's still not a free-for-all. There's still some rules in place that everyone hopefully is adhering to. And the meeting guidelines and hygiene and all the rest of it. So hopefully we can keep up the good work and still continue opening up the community and relaunching, especially business back to where it was. Councillor Hibbs?
Just before thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just before we go ahead and receive all that as information, I just want to remind everybody that I think, missed this one, which is the little handout that we had. We're supposed to add this to the mailbox, so 6.2C. We're meant to discuss this, or at least. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the reminder. We have a letter here before us. Chief Gowdy?
Yes, so this is an invitation from Lacombe FCSS. They've partnered with Wolf Creek and have created a Lacombe dementia-friendly community project. It is a based on a 2.5-year pilot project led by the Brenda Stafford Foundation. And they are holding a meeting, a community planning group meeting via Zoom on June 9th, 2020. They've invited council to allocate either a representative or ask administration direct administration to participate on their behalf. We do not yet have a time. Unfortunately, they are missing some key information on their invite. And so I have reached out to them this evening to ask for a time, which I'll share with council once we get there. If you are able, please let me know. Or of course, if you know right now that you prefer administration to represent the city on this group, that makes things.
I don't think that council was interested in precluding the involvement of administration, but I believe that there was at least 2 councillors that expressed interest in taking part in this item. So Councillor Hibbs was one, and Councillor Gullickson, I believe, was, or Councillor Ross, I'm sorry. So I will leave that up to the 2 councillors and yourself to work out.
Actually, I just want to make a comment on it.
Certainly.
Yeah, so I do want to, like I mentioned earlier before our meeting started, that it was Councillor Hoekstra and I that both attended the original discussion on this at a local venue here. It was very interesting, and there's a lot of possibilities here. I think personally, I would actually recommend that administration be involved in this rather than a councillor. I think that would probably be more valuable of use of administration time, but also like for this group. I think that would be the better liaison. I don't know, maybe Councillor Hoekstra thinks differently, but that would be my recommendation, is that we actually suggest that administration be involved. I'll give that over to your thoughts.
So, as I said, we'll move it up then for the employee staff representation to Chief Gowdy to see if he fits, and I understand that Councillor Ross would like to be involved.
Yeah, just have some family.
Very good. Councillor Hoekstra?
I don't, thank you, Mayor Creasy. I don't want to count, well, I don't want to go back and forth, but I was part of some conversation personally that they really wanted a councillor.
Is it?
Yeah, they did. I mean, if we can do both, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But they definitely, yeah, wanted, we're looking for a councillor on this committee. And I apologize, but I can't.
Very good. Thank you for reminding us of that document so we didn't forget. I think that is the information portion. The report portion, items 6 that we have this evening for information. We could have a motion, please. Councillor Hoekstra.
I move that we accept all information documents as, no, what is it called here? Information, yes.
Absolutely.
That's a brilliant motion.
Information is information.
Yeah.
Would you like any additional information on that? I'm seeing no hands up, so all those in favor? Thank you. And brings us all the way down to section 7, adoption of minutes from May 11th from our regular council meeting. Everybody have an opportunity to review those minutes. Anything that needs to be revived or was omitted? Concerned anyone? Councillor Gullickson?
I'll move the minutes as presented.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. So we have no notices of motion this evening. We did have one additional. Is there not an additional camera in? It wasn't for your benefit, honest. I actually thought there was one, but can't. Councillor Hoekstra?
I move to adjourn at 7:54.
7:54 it is.
Beautiful. Well done.
Very good. Even with a informative and lengthy presentation on how we're still at $8, so that's good. All those in favor?